My name is Daniel Harper, and for 12 years I worked as an FBI special agent based in Anchorage, Alaska. Most of my cases involved missing persons, violent crime, and organized criminal groups operating in remote parts of the state. Alaska was different from anywhere else in America. Entire towns were separated by mountains, glacier, and frozen wilderness. If someone disappeared there, the weather usually erased every trace before investigators could even arrive. In October 2018, I was assigned a case that didn't make sense from the very beginning. Over the course of 11 days, 4 commercial fishermen vanished from different boats working along Prince William Sound. They weren't part of the same company, they weren't fishing together, and they had no connection to each other. The only thing they shared was the last GPS location recorded before all contact stopped. The Coast Guard launched one of the largest search operations in the area. Helicopters searched from sunrise until sunset. Rescue boats covered miles of open water. Divers checked every location where the emergency signals had disappeared. Nothing was found. No life rafts.
No floating debris. No damaged boats. No bodies.
It was as if the men had simply disappeared into thin air. Normally, the FBI wouldn't become involved in a case like that. Missing fishermen were unfortunately common in Alaska, especially during rough weather. But this case changed after the 5th incident. A crab fishing boat drifted into Cordova Harbor just after sunrise. The engine was still running, but the vessel had almost no fuel left. There was only one person on board, Captain Michael Dawson. The rest of his crew had vanished. The Coast Guard officers who boarded the vessel expected to find signs of an accident or a fight, but everything looked strangely normal. Coffee mugs still sat on the table inside the cabin. Half-prepared fishing gear remained on deck. Personal bags and jackets belonged to crew members who were no longer there. Nothing looked disturbed. Michael Dawson was taken to a nearby hospital suffering from dehydration and shock. According to the medical staff, he spoke only once during the first 12 hours. They came out of the fog. That was all he said. Doctors believed he was traumatized after watching his crew drown. The Coast Guard believed exhaustion had affected his memory. Then one of the investigators noticed something unusual. Every clock on Dawson's boat had stopped. The GPS clock. The digital clock above the control panel. The clock on the radio. Even 3 different wristwatches recovered from the sleeping quarters. Every single one displayed the same time. 3:17 a.m. Electrical failures happen on boats all the time. But every clock stopping at exactly the same minute was impossible to explain. The Coast Guard requested FBI assistance. 24 hours later, I arrived in Cordova. The harbor was quiet beneath a gray October sky. Fishing boats rocked gently against the docks while cold wind carried the smell of salt water through the town. The sheriff met me outside the station. "You won't get much from Dawson," he said. "He barely talks." "Has he said anything besides that sentence?" I asked. The sheriff nodded. "Just one thing." "What?" "He keeps asking if the fog has come back." We drove to the hospital together. Michael Dawson wasn't inside his room. A nurse pointed toward the rear courtyard. "He refuses to stay indoors." Outside, I found him sitting alone on a wooden bench overlooking the harbor. He hadn't shaved in days. His eyes looked exhausted, but they never stopped scanning the water. I introduced myself and sat beside him. "My name is Daniel Harper. I'm with the FBI." He looked at me for only a second before returning his attention to the ocean. "You shouldn't be here after sunset," he said quietly. "I just want to know what happened." He remained silent for almost a minute. Finally he asked, "Have you ever heard someone call your name when nobody was there?" I shook my head. He nodded slowly. I hadn't either. Until that night. He took a deep breath and stared into the distance. We were hauling crab pots about 40 miles offshore. The sea was calm. No wind.
No rain.
Then the fog rolled in. Was it heavy? I asked. It was wrong. What do you mean? It didn't move. I frowned. The radar showed nothing. The wind stopped completely. Even the waves went quiet. He rubbed his shaking hands together. Then we heard it. What? 3 knocks. Where? Under the boat. He closed his eyes. 3 slow knocks. Boom. 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 We thought maybe we'd hit driftwood. So one of my deckhands leaned over the side. Michael stopped speaking. His breathing became uneven. What happened next? I asked. He was gone. He fell.
No.
He didn't scream. He didn't splash. He was just gone. I waited. The others rushed to the rail looking for him. Did they see anything? Michael slowly shook his head. Nothing. Then we heard his voice. My stomach tightened. Where from? The fog. He called one of the crew by name. I'm over here. The voice sounded exactly like him. Michael looked directly at me for the first time. It knew his voice. He lowered his head. And one by one, they answered.